I didn't have the ability. I just didn't have the ability. Grace had the ability to be rude or really to confront.
In 1970, Susan Dey was just 17 when she became famous overnight. By 19, she weighed less than most 12-year-olds. The cameras loved her, but she was dying inside. David Cassidy broke her heart. Alcohol nearly killed her. And even a spy infiltrated her Alcoholics Anonymous meetings to sell her secrets. Today, she's worth $10 million, but refuses to show her face. She hasn't been photographed in years. When she finally appeared on video in 2020, fans couldn't believe their eyes. The girl they remembered was completely gone. Susan Dey's life changed forever when she was just 8 years old. In 1961, her mother, Ruth Pyle Dey, died suddenly, leaving a deep void that nothing could fill. Susan's father, Robert Smith Dey, who worked as a newspaper editor, was left to raise Susan and her 3 siblings on his own. The loss of her mother hit Susan hard. It made her grow up faster than most kids her age. The family tried to start over, moving from Pekin, Illinois to Thornwood, New York. But no matter where they went, the pain of losing Ruth followed them. That sadness stayed with Susan, pushing her to become stronger, more determined, and ready to fight for her place in the world. When Susan's father remarried, everything shifted again. Gail Dey, her stepmother, wasn't like the cruel stepmothers from fairy tales. In fact, Gail saw something special in Susan. One day in 1968, after reading 17 magazine, Gail sent pictures of Susan and her sister Leslie to a modeling agency in New York. Susan was just 15. To everyone's surprise, both girls were signed right away. It was rare for girls from small towns to break into modeling so fast, but Susan had a look that stood out. Thanks to Gail's bold move, Susan's path to stardom had begun. Her first modeling job came quickly, and it was nothing like what people expected. At 15, Susan's face appeared on the cover of a Perset's tampon booklet called Getting to Know Yourself. In 1970, talking about menstruation was still seen as shocking, but Susan's fresh, kind face helped thousands of girls feel less afraid of growing up. Some might have thought it was an awkward start, but for Susan, it was the door that opened the world of professional modeling. It taught her that being different could make her stand out, and that lesson would follow her through life. Susan had been born on December 10, 1952, in Pekin, Illinois, at 4:17 in the morning. After the family's move to Thornwood, she went to Columbus Elementary School. Later, they settled in Mount Kisco, where she went to Fox Lane High School. She graduated in 1970. At school, she took part in plays like Arsenic and Old Lace and Summer and Smoke. Acting became her escape. It helped her forget the sadness at home. By the time she finished school, she was juggling modeling jobs and classes, showing the determination that would soon make her famous. Losing her mother so young gave Susan a secret drive. She used acting to block out the pain and the pressure she felt as one of 4 siblings trying to hold their family together. Acting wasn't just fun. It gave her a break from the heavy feelings she carried inside. Each role helped her feel free, if only for a little while. That desire for escape and approval pushed her to work harder than anyone realized. Then came the audition that changed her life. In 1970, when Susan was 17, the Partridge family was looking for its star. Hundreds of experienced actresses tried out. Susan had never acted on TV, never taken an acting class, but her natural charm and honesty in front of the camera won her the part of Lori Partridge. Even Susan was shocked when she got the role. One day, she was a high school graduate. The next, she was filming a hit TV show. It was a moment that turned her from an unknown teenager into a star overnight. On the show, Susan played a musical character, but the truth was, she didn't know how to play the keyboard. The producers didn't even let her take lessons, so Susan learned finger positions between scenes, pretending to play along with the music. She worked hard to look like she belonged, even though only David Cassidy and Shirley Jones actually sang on the records. Still, Susan's performance fooled millions of viewers each week. The Partridge Family became a massive hit as soon as it aired in 1970. It ran for 4 seasons and 96 episodes. Their song, I Think I Love You, even outsold the Beatles' Let It Be that year. The merchandise made $500 million. Susan's face was everywhere, on posters, lunchboxes, and magazines. The fame came so fast, she once called it a tidal wave that swept away her normal life. Behind the smiling faces of the Partridge Family, something much darker was happening. Susan Day, who played sweet Laurie Partridge, was hiding a painful secret. She had a deep, hopeless crush on David Cassidy, the actor playing her brother. This wasn't just a little crush. It was an overwhelming passion that filled her with both hope and heartbreak. Shirley Jones and even David himself wrote later that Susan was mad about him, just gaga over him. But as she watched him date one girl after another, Susan had to smile for the cameras and act like nothing was wrong. Every day on set became harder. The pain of pretending ate away at her, and the tension between them grew so strong that the rest of the cast couldn't help but notice. When the Partridge Family ended in 1974, Susan finally had the chance to be honest. One evening at David's ranch, she told him how she really felt. After years of hiding her heart, she let it all out. But David didn't feel the same. Even though they spent the night together, it wasn't what Susan had dreamed of. David later admitted it was awkward and cold. Instead of bringing them closer, that night tore them apart. From then on, Susan pulled away. She avoided reunions. She stayed quiet in interviews. She kept her distance from David and the rest of the cast. The friendship was broken, and it stayed that way. Years later, in 1994, David wrote a book called Saman Get Happy: Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus. In it, he told the world about that one night with Susan. He wrote things that deeply hurt her, saying she lacked the sex appeal he wanted and that he could only ever see her as a sister. For Susan, this was the final blow. She felt exposed and betrayed. She cut all ties with David. No more reunions. No more speaking to him. No more looking back. She didn't even respond when he later tried to say sorry. That chapter of her life was over for good. Susan Day's story is one of the most heartbreaking and powerful tales from Hollywood's golden era of television. At just 17 years old, while starring in The Partridge Family, she began a terrifying battle that no one around her truly understood. Susan, standing tall at 5'7", dropped to just 90 pounds. Her appearance changed so drastically that people started to whisper. Some even wrote letters asking if she had cancer. That's how shocking it was. Eating disorders weren't something people talked about back then. Most didn't even know what anorexia was. And Susan, she thought she'd simply found a brilliant new way to stay thin. She believed she was in control. Her meals became nothing more than raw carrots. She ate so many that her skin turned orange. And while the world praised her slender figure, inside, she was disappearing. Her body gave out warning signs. She stopped having her period. She looked in the mirror and saw what she wanted to see, not what was really there. For 18 long months, from age 17 to 19, Susan lived this nightmare. These were supposed to be the best years of her life. The Partridge Family was a hit. She was famous, adored, but behind the scenes, Susan felt trapped. Everyone else seemed to control her life: producers, agents, fans. The only thing she felt she could control was what she ate, or rather, what she didn't eat. It gave her a false sense of power. She thought, I can decide this. I'll just have half. But the truth was, she was slowly destroying herself, and nobody around her seemed to see it. Or maybe they saw it, but didn't know what to say. Then came the moment that changed everything. A child, a complete stranger, looked at Susan and didn't see a glamorous TV star. The kid pointed and said, "You look disgusting." Those 3 words hit Susan harder than anything else ever could. For the first time, she saw herself the way others did, and it horrified her. That tiny voice of a child did what no doctor or co-star had managed to do. It woke her up. She knew in that instant that she had to stop, that she had to fight her way back. Not for her career, not for the cameras, but for herself. Looking back, Susan admitted it was all about control. When everything in her world felt like it belonged to someone else, food was the one thing that seemed to be hers. But starving herself didn't give her power. It nearly took her life. And in those crucial teenage years, while everyone else saw the bright lights and fame, Susan was battling a silent, invisible enemy. When the Partridge family ended in 1974, Susan Day was just 21 years old. Millions saw her as the sweet and innocent Laurie Partridge. But Susan didn't want to be trapped in that image forever. She decided to take bold, even shocking steps to change how people saw her. In 1975, she starred in Cage Without a Key. She played Valerie Smith, a teenager wrongly accused of murder and sent to a brutal women's prison. The role showed a much darker side than fans expected. Then, in 1977, she stunned audiences again. In Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night, Susan played Rowena Harper, a young mother who was mentally unstable and abused her own child. The performance was so raw that the film earned a Golden Globe nomination. Susan later said she wanted parts that showed young women in trouble, roles filled with danger and drama. She even took parts that required nude or semi-nude scenes, something no one expected from a former teen idol. These choices didn't always lead to hit films, but they showed she was determined to control her career and break free from the good girl label. Susan's first film role came even earlier. In 1972, when she was just 19, she appeared in Skyjacked. The movie starred Charlton Heston as a pilot whose plane is hijacked by a troubled Vietnam veteran. Susan played Ellie Brewster, a first-class passenger who finds herself caught in the terrifying ordeal. Her character became a suspect after strange lipstick messages were discovered in the bathroom. The movie ended in Moscow, with Soviet soldiers surrounding the plane. Susan's performance stood out because it was so different from Laurie Partridge. The movie also featured James Brolin, Yvette Mimieux, and NFL star Rosie Greer. It was the last film for Oscar nominee Jean Crane. Skyjacked helped Susan show Hollywood that she could take on serious, dramatic roles. Her TV roles after the Partridge family showed even more range. In Cage Without a Key, she tackled themes of injustice and survival inside a harsh prison. The movie felt raw and real, and people saw Susan in a whole new light. In Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night, she played a mother whose mind was falling apart, leading her to hurt her child. This was a subject few dared to put on TV in the 1970s, but Susan took the risk. The film got attention nationwide, and critics praised her for her fearless performance. These parts made it clear Susan Day wasn't afraid to take on tough topics or challenge the audience. In 1981, Susan tried something different. She starred in Looker, a science fiction thriller directed by Michael Crichton. The movie also featured Albert Finney and James Coburn. Susan played Cindy Fairmont, a model who finds herself trapped in a deadly conspiracy involving computer-driven plastic surgery. The film was one of the first to use computer-generated 3D models of a human body. It came out before Tron and tried to explore the dangers of media and technology. But despite the cool effects, the movie didn't connect with audiences. It earned only modest money and got mixed reviews. Susan's performance included a nude scene, but even that didn't save the film from fading fast. The failure of Looker meant Susan's movie career never quite took off. But she would later find great success on TV, especially in LA Law. There's one thing about Susan Dey that truly sets her apart. She has always refused to take part in any Partridge family reunion. Shirley Jones confirmed that Susan is the only cast member who always said no. Why? Many believe it's because of what happened with David Cassidy. He wrote about their friendship and private moments in his autobiography, something that deeply hurt Susan. She chose to stay silent, to protect herself, and to avoid the spotlight that came with those reunions. Susan Dey seemed to have it all. She had charmed millions as Laurie Partridge in the Partridge Family and won awards as Grace Van Owen in LA Law. But in the 1980s, while people saw a perfect star, Susan was falling apart inside. The pressure to look flawless and act like the ideal American sweetheart crushed her. Every day, she felt trapped by the image she was forced to keep. To quiet the anxiety and the endless judgment, she started drinking. At first, it helped her feel numb. But soon, the drinking got out of control. By the middle of the 1980s, Susan was deep in addiction. Her career, her health, and even her life were hanging by a thread. She later said that she felt so worthless she didn't even recognize the woman the world admired. She called that time a living hell. For years, no one knew. The glossy smile on TV hid the real pain she was drowning in. But eventually, she found the courage to face it. She reached out for help and began the hard fight to get better. After a year of sobriety, Susan felt proud. She celebrated quietly with her group at Alcoholics Anonymous. But even that safe space was ripped away. In the early 1990s, the tabloids crossed a line that shocked even Susan. They planted a spy in her AA meetings. That person secretly reported everything about her recovery and the celebration of her first year sober. The next thing she knew, private details were splashed across supermarket shelves. Susan was devastated. She said she was furious that someone had invaded her healing space. It showed just how far some people would go to make money off her pain. Even her most personal moments weren't safe from gossip. By 1993, Susan knew she had to fight hard to stay on track. She went to AA meetings 3 times a week. She also got counseling not just for her drinking, but for her long struggle with anorexia. She talked openly about how both problems were linked. The meetings and therapy gave her strength. They helped her face the pain that had haunted her for so long. Her husband, Bernard Safransky, stood by her through it all. Susan said that his support made all the difference. Recovery wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But with help, she kept going, one day at a time. Susan Dey's return to stardom in 1986 stunned Hollywood. For years, people remembered her as sweet Laurie Partridge from the Partridge Family, the teen idol who had charmed viewers from 1970 to 1974. But by the mid-1980s, that charm had faded in the eyes of casting directors. She was stuck in TV movies and forgettable series. Her future looked uncertain. Then came LA Law. On September 15, 1986, when the show premiered, Susan stepped onto the screen as Deputy District Attorney Grace Van Owen. The change was so striking, no one could believe it at first. Could the former teen star really pull off such a serious role? But she did more than pull it off. She owned it. She showed strength, heart, and sharp intelligence. Suddenly, the girl who once sang with her TV family was now one of the most powerful women on network drama. By the end of the first season, critics and audiences saw her in a whole new light. People called her one of the most compelling dramatic actresses on television. What seemed impossible had happened. She had transformed completely. Her comeback became one of TV's greatest surprises. In January 1988, her hard work paid off in the most public way. She won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a drama series. For Susan, it was more than just a trophy. She stood on stage and told the world she'd never won anything before. Except once, a turkey from a grocery store raffle. That night, the award marked her arrival as a serious actress. And the praise didn't stop there. She was nominated for that same Golden Globe 5 years in a row, from 1988 to 1992. She also earned 3 Emmy nominations in 1987, 1988, and 1989. People finally stopped seeing her as a former teen star. They saw her for what she had become, a true talent. Grace Van Owen wasn't just a role, she became a symbol. Women across the country wrote to Susan, saying that Grace inspired them to chase their dreams. Many said they went to law school because of Grace. Some even named their daughters after her. Grace showed strength in a man's world. She took on cases about sexual harassment, discrimination, and ethics. She became a role model at a time when strong female characters were rare. The Grace Van Owen effect helped change how women were seen on TV and in real life. Between 1986 and 1992, Susan appeared in 110 of LA. Law's 172 episodes. That's 6 seasons of powerful, emotional stories. The show tackled issues like the death penalty, abortion, racism, AIDS, and domestic violence. In one episode, Grace persuaded a scared witness to testify against a gang member. When the witness was killed, Grace was shattered. Stories like that made viewers think deeply about the justice system. When Love and War launched on CBS in September 1992, everyone expected it to be a hit. It had Diane English, the creator of Murphy Brown, behind it. It had Susan Dey, fresh from her successful run on LA Law. She played Wally Porter, a smart New York restaurateur. Jay Thomas played Jack Stein, a loud and bold newspaper columnist. The show promised romance, humor, and tension, like Cheers. But things didn't go as planned. People noticed something was missing. Susan and Jay had no spark. Viewers called Susan's performance stiff. Critics said her timing felt off. Behind the scenes, the producers were frustrated. CBS bosses stayed quiet. After just 23 episodes, Susan was fired. The official reason was no chemistry. It shocked everyone. Susan had been a star. But overnight, she was out. Annie Potts took her place in the second season. The show tried to save itself, but the damage was done. Susan's firing became a famous example of how fast things can fall apart in Hollywood. For Susan, the replacement stung. The media covered it everywhere. The producer's excuse of creative differences fooled no one. Everyone knew what happened. Annie Potts, famous from designing women, stepped in. She played Dana Palladino, the new restaurant owner. Susan's character vanished without a trace. The change was loud and public. Critics talked non-stop about Susan's failure at comedy. Her success in drama seemed forgotten. For Susan, it was more than losing a job. It hit her confidence hard. Just months earlier, she had won awards. Now, she was seen as a mistake. The whole thing showed how brutal and fast Hollywood could turn on its own. But even in this tough time, Susan tried to prove herself. On February 8, 1992, she hosted Saturday Night Live. It was a bold move. People had been doubting her comedy skills, but on that stage, she showed courage. She did a funny Partridge Family skit. She acted in a courtroom sketch with a fake Mike Tyson. In her monologue, she joked about her years growing up on TV. She laughed at herself. Reviewers said she did better than expected. She wasn't the best comedian, but she showed heart. That night reminded people that Susan had more range than they thought. Even when critics doubted her, she didn't back down. After Love and War, Susan found a new path. She turned to TV movies. The 1990s were full of them, and Susan stayed busy. In Deadly Love in 1995, she played a lonely vampire photographer. In Bridge of Time in 1997, she was an aid worker who found a hidden city after a plane crash. In Lies and Lullabies in 1993, she played a pregnant addict fighting for her baby. In Rain in 2003, she took on a family drama. These movies let Susan play deep, emotional roles. They kept her career going while other stars from her era faded. Audiences and critics praised the feeling she brought to these parts. In 2004, Susan made her final appearance on screen. She played Dr. Breen, a psychologist on Third Watch. Her character helped the team after a co-worker's death. She appeared in just 2 episodes, but she left a mark. Her performance was calm, caring, and real. Susan was in her early 50s. By then, she was ready to step away from the spotlight. That quiet exit was far from the drama of her earlier years. She chose peace over fame. Susan Day's life changed forever in 1988. That was the year she married Bernard Sofronsky, a respected television producer with 3 Emmy nominations and 2 Peabody Awards. This marriage, now over 35 years strong, gave her what she had always needed: peace. Before Bernard, Susan's personal life had been a storm. The pressures of fame and a painful breakup with David Cassidy left her shaken. But Bernard brought calm. Their wedding was small and private, far from the glare of the media. Unlike her first marriage to Leonard Hershen, which ended after 7 years, this time Susan found something solid. Together, they made a promise. They would choose each other over Hollywood. And they kept that promise. They left the bright lights behind and moved to a quiet town called Andes in New York. Their home sits on 25 acres of land at 1395 Upper Dingle Hill Road. It's a 2-story house, built in 2004, with over 3,000 square feet of space. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and endless peace. Andes has fewer than 2,500 residents. That's just how Susan wanted it. She stays out of sight. No local events, no crowds. Even neighbors rarely see her. For someone who once filled magazine covers, this silence is part of the mystery that still surrounds her. In 2020, fans got a rare surprise. Susan appeared at an LA Lawcast reunion, her first public event in years. It was a virtual event, held over video because of the pandemic. Fans were shocked to see her. Susan spoke openly about her time on the show. She shared how she got the part of Grace Van Owen and gave behind-the-scenes stories that delighted everyone. The reunion reminded people of her talent and gave them a glimpse of how she feels about her career today. It was a moment of nostalgia and a reminder of why she was so beloved. Susan's smart choices didn't end with her personal life. By 2025, she built a net worth of $10 million. That's rare for a star whose fame peaked so long ago. She earned it through unforgettable roles like Laurie Partridge in The Partridge Family and Grace Van Owen in LA Law, which even won her a Golden Globe. She kept earning through reruns and syndication rights. She never needed a comeback or reality TV. At 72, Susan lives on her own terms, with no debt and no need for the spotlight. Her legacy didn't stop with her. In 1978, Susan had a daughter named Sarah Day Hershen. Like her mother, Sarah became an actress. Her most noted role was in the 2009 film Danger Island. Sarah, who stands 5'7", made her own name in the industry. At 46, She's built a career with its own identity. While Susan stepped back from fame, Sarah embraced it. Together, they show what it looks like when a Hollywood family gets it right. Today, Susan focuses on helping others. She serves on the board of the Rape Treatment Center at UCLA Santa Monica Medical Center. The center, started in 1974, helps sexual assault victims with medical care, forensic work, and therapy. Susan doesn't just sit in meetings. She co-narrated a film called Campus Rape with her L.A. Law co-star, Corbin Bernsen. The 20-minute documentary features real stories from survivors. Over 1,100 colleges use it in freshman orientation. Susan's work is personal. She speaks out, raises awareness, and pushes for change. She has turned her fame into a force for good. That is the true mark she leaves behind.